good, Illini Nation? It's your man in the middle, Deon Thomas, back for another season of Champaign on Ice. And as always, bringing you nothing but the best. So today, sitting here with my man, Scott Richey, who covers the Illini for the News Gazette. And also, he gets, let's pat him on the back. He gets some AP votes when he's in this thing, too. So, you only get those if you're a big dog. And we sit with one of the big dogs. Scott, thanks for joining me, man. How you doing today?
Good, and I feel good to be a big dog.
Hey, everybody wants to be a big dog. If you're gonna be in the pound, you might as well be the big dog and not the Chihuahua.
Yeah, and that AP vote. That's the News Gazette has had it for decades. It used to be Lauren Tate's way back in the day, but I'm gladly carrying on the proud tradition of voting in the top 25.
There you go. I mean, hey, that's an honor. I mean, like you said, the News Gazette has had it for a while. You are the man in control of that vote now. Personally, I think you've done a tremendous job with some of your votes. And not just that, you actually have a vote when you're voting for like high school awards as well, correct?
Yeah, I've done some of that, throughout the years, and I always say yes, pretty much. If someone wants me to vote on something or do a podcast, I typically just lean towards I'll say yes. So maybe they'll say yes in the future for me.
Well, I tell you this, I appreciate you coming on, man. And you and I sit right next to each other when we're covering Illinois basketball games. You, of course, for the newspaper, me on the live broadcast with Brian Barnhart. So I always love to get your insight when we're talking Illinois basketball, because I think different perspectives and the way people see things gives you a more well-rounded view of what the team is like. And like you, we watched the first three games that they played in Champaign, and then, of course, took a trip, and you and I bumped into each other in Vegas. I hope you didn't do like I do and lost some money, like I did rather than lost some money. Didn't lose much, only $100, because I don't like to gamble and pull them, the little arm over there on that thing, man. But we had an opportunity to watch these guys leading up to the Vegas trip. Give me your opinion of what you saw early, what you saw in Vegas, and what you see going forward.
It was interesting because I think those first three games, I mean, they served a purpose. It was very much a let's kind of figure out what this new team could be. But I mean, with no disrespect to the teams that I played, they just weren't on the same level. And I think the results were what everyone expected them to be. So I was curious what Vegas would be like. And going there on that Friday night and beat UCLA in the first game, I thought that was telling, because this was kind of a half young, almost all new though Illinois team, and you just didn't know how they would respond, against a team that was ranked number 8 in the country at the time, and was a veteran team with guys that had played together for several years. And you would think every advantage would have gone UCLA's way. Turns out not the case. Illinois played just a really terrific game, and certainly I think benefited from a crowd in Las Vegas that might as well have just been State Farm Center transported all the way west. I mean, that was maybe the most incredible thing about the whole weekend. It was just how many Illinois fans made the trip. But the team did what it had to do to beat UCLA, and then obviously that second game against Virginia was in a position, I think, to win that game, and probably could have. But again, it was another example of a real veteran Virginia team that just executed down the stretch a little better. Good learning experience, I think, for Illinois to see kind of what was missing in those moments, and come back, play Lindenwood. Again, another one of those as expected games. I'm really curious about these next 2 weeks. This stretch could be, it's not going to make or break the Illinois season, but it'll be telling to kind of see where this team is at and if they're as good as I think they can be.
Yeah. You made some great points. A young team, well, relatively young team, because they're depending on so much on 4 freshmen to play and to play well and to do a good job. And you're right. In that UCLA game, I thought that first half of the first half, meaning that first 10 minutes, they looked like what we all believe they're going to be. Their defense was great. Even when we went through our scoring lulls, they were able to hold down UCLA, which is a very potent offensive team, and really able to hold them in check. That second 10 minutes got down big. You know, I was talking to Brian when we were on air, and I was like, man, we have to stop turning over the basketball because they're going to make you pay, UCLA, that is, if you turn over the ball. What happens? 2 turnovers to start the half. And this is like, okay. It's like, all right, this could get ugly. But you watch them fight back. You know, they put Sincere Harris in, changes the whole momentum. They come back and win. And like you said, Virginia, older team, know who they are, plays to their strengths, and we had to turnovers down the end, but had an opportunity to win that game. This team right now is still growing, still coming together, but I mentioned those 4 freshmen and how much we're dependent. And I'm going to say 5 freshmen. I'm going to throw Dane Danger in there as well because he only played 3 games when he was at Baylor before his injury. Didn't play last year, so he's basically a freshman. How have those 5 freshmen, Sincere Harris, Sky Clark, Ty Rogers, and Jaden Epps, how have they looked? And as like I said, and Dane Danger, how have they looked to you, knowing that they're such a big part of what Illinois is going to do moving forward?
My thing is just telling that they're all playing, at this point. And the coaching staff really they talked up Dane Danger really from the kind of the moment he got to Illinois, in January. There's a lot of, once he gets through, body by Fletch, he could be a really big piece. So I don't know if I was expecting him to play as well as he has early, but I knew that there was just as much as they kept talking about him, I was like, okay, I feel like there could be something there. The freshmen, you just never know.
Yeah.
And, freshman guards maybe have a little bit better of a shot than freshman bigs sometimes, just because it's a little easier to adapt and adjust. But again, it could go one way or the other, and you have to kind of wait and see. But they've all, had their moments. And I thought the Lindenwood game was so big for Sky Clark. It was like he finally found that balance between, running the offense, but also not being afraid to call his own number and look for some offensive opportunities for himself, which I think he should do. He's a good scorer, but he's like trying to be such a good teammate that he was maybe passing up some looks just to, okay, I can be this point guard. I can get my guys involved, and it's okay to get yourself involved. But I think they've all maybe been better than I expected. Sincere Harris has really, found a comfort level, I think, in what his role is on this team, and it's come off the bench, cause some chaos defensively, and just be that big ball of energy. Jaden Epps, he had the reputation as a scorer, but freshman guards, you never know, if it's going to translate right away, and I think it has. And just the intricacies of his game. Just one thing I noticed, when he attacks the basket, he's got such a high release and he plays the ball so high off the backboard. It's he can get that shot to fall and not get swatted just because of the way he can approach it.
Right.
And then Ty Rogers has had some foul trouble. I mean, struggled a little bit in Vegas, but he's still a guy you can bring in. He's going to do a little bit of everything, and he's going to play super hard, and that's fine. There's still so much more he could do, but I mean, they're all playing. They're all playing pretty well, and I think that's a sign that staff kind of hit it out of the park, with this group, and they needed them to be this good. I think, to maybe meet some of these expectations they have for the program.
No, I agree with you 100%, and I think the staff did a tremendous job. When you're dependent on freshmen, it's kind of like that Tom Clancy book that's up back there on your shelf. You're kind of getting a lot of mystery, a lot of suspense, and not really knowing what you're going to get for the whole season. But I think these guys at the beginning of the season so far have really come out and have played better than expected. They've played, I would say, more like sophomores or juniors at this point than they have freshmen. They've really shown a comfort level at the college level that you don't really get to see from a lot of freshmen, but you can still see where they're growing. You mentioned Sky Clark. He's somebody I've been waiting on to really, like you said, call his own number and that it's okay. But I also understand that that's something that you have to learn. You're not just going to go out there and be like a Trent Frazier was his freshman year, where you're just lighting it up, because their roles are a little different. But at the same time, he has that ability to put the ball in the basket. Today's game coming up against Syracuse, I think is going to be another thing that's really telling against them. Well, let's just say this team alone, because most teams struggle against zones and things of that nature simply because you just don't play a lot against it. How do you see this upcoming game, and how you think Illinois will do against the Boeheim zone that has been there forever?
Yeah, and I think that could be a bit of an equalizer, because if kind of looking at the two rosters, I think Illinois has more talent. I certainly think they've played better this season. Syracuse has dropped a couple head scratchers, really, at home against Colgate again, the second year in a row. On a neutral at St. John's, at home to Bryant over the weekend. So it's not a great Syracuse team, but that 2-3 zone can throw a wrench in some well-crafted plans, just because, like you mentioned, a lot of man defense in basketball in general, not just college. And the zone is different. What they're going to have to do, I think, is there were times against Lindenwood where there's a lot of just kind of standing along the perimeter, a lot of just kind of running back and forth along the perimeter. There's got to be, you have to attack the interior of the zone, like either getting the ball in the high post or dribble drives and then either finish or kick. Like you can't be static around the perimeter and just hope you're going to knock down a bunch of threes. Now, this Illinois team could make some threes, but it just has to be a little more dynamic. And I think that's where Sky Clark could really maybe make a difference, where Jaden Epps could, because they both attack the basket really well. Talked with Coleman Hawkins today, and he's been that kind of man in the middle a little bit, and facilitating out of the high post, which I think fits him really well. So they have the pieces, I think, to counter the zone. It's just it's one thing to maybe run it in practice. It's another to go out there and do it against the coach that's been running it for 42 years.
Exactly.
So
one of the things and I think you'll agree with me when we talk about this team, is when the ball moves, they're really good. And that's across I've played, I've coached, I've done all those things. That's pretty much across the board. When teams move the basketball, then they normally do better. This Illinois team, to me, is, especially in the half-court setting, that's even more of a truth. Because when we get the dribbling and things of that nature, we struggle. And I think this is where a lot of our turnovers come from. I think we're good enough to shoot the basketball from the outside, but I think it's really understanding getting the ball in the paint. And these freshmen have the bodies to go in there and get things done. Have that been one of the things that you've seen so far with this team?
Yeah, and you look at who these freshmen are just from a physicality standpoint, and they're not Trent Frazier in 2017, where he was really skinny dude and maybe had to shoot a lot of jump shots just because getting to the rim was not going to be successful. Sky Clark's 6'3", 200 pounds. Like, he can absorb some of that contact. Jaden Epps is just kind of a bulldog. He's not quite as big as Sky, but
a lot of this, boy.
Few guys tougher. Sincere Harris is lankier, but again, another tough guy that Chester Frazier recruited. Big surprise that he's finding these hard-nosed guys.
Exactly.
And then, like Terrence Shannon, and we're going to talk about an older guy, but I would not want to get between him and the basket, mostly because, I know I can't keep up. And a lot of teams are finding out that they can't keep up. He's just so quick, but he's also built like a linebacker. They have the guys, I think, that can be successful if they do the right things and don't over dribble and don't get stuck on the perimeter.
Right. And that's another thing, that this team is so much better when they're pushing the ball in transition. And I think that's going to be key to getting the ball off the defensive boards and pushing it up the floor, not allowing Syracuse to get back and set up that zone. So far this year, I think we've done a really good job, even though we haven't scored a lot of fast break baskets, which is strange, simply just, and I think that's the way they count a fast break basket. If you're not laying the ball directly in the basket, it's not being counted. But we've had some episodes where Terrence Shannon Jr. or others have penetrated and then kicked the ball to the corner, where we've been able to get open shots and quick threes. That's one of the keys to victory. That's normally what I'm doing when I'm sitting there with Brian Barnhart, but I want to get you give your keys to victory for this game against Syracuse.
Well, that's a good one, because if you let them just set up that zone and dictate the tempo and just be, able to just get, slow it down, get back, get in that 2-3, like, that's going to be tough. And I think it could really, come down to a little bit of the shooting, because as much as you can, think about, getting to the basket, the zone, can collapse on you, and there's going to be opportunities for shots to fall. I think RJ Melendez is going to have to shoot it a little better. He's got on track, I think, against Lindenwood, but they're going to need him to knock down shots. And, again, Matthew Meyer got on track, I think, against Lindenwood. They're going to need him to be a shot maker, because he's one of those guys that I think can benefit maybe the most from Sky Clark, Jaden Epps, Terrence Shannon getting to the basket and being ready to shoot. Coleman Hawkins the same way, and probably need Coleman. I think a key to the game, Coleman Hawkins needs to shoot more than 2 times.
Yes.
He took 2 shots against Lindenwood. First one didn't come until the second half. And he did a lot of other good things. And he's going to do that. He's going to facilitate, as that kind of point forward. He's going to rebound. Need him to score.
Right.
As well.
I'm glad you said that, because that leads me into the next topics of this conversation is the returners. And not just the returners, but the, I guess, upperclassmen as well as the returners. Bringing in, of course, Terrence Shannon Jr., Matt Meyer, with the return of Coleman Hawkins as well as RJ Melendez. And unfortunately, right now, not having Luke Goody. I think Luke, let's start with him, would have been a huge piece to this game against Syracuse because of his smarts, his ability to shoot the basketball, and he's not afraid to go in there and bang bodies. How much do you think not having Luke will affect this game?
He's kind of the player that you want in this game, because if you can, much I talked about, attacking the basket, being dynamic offensively, if you can shoot over the zone and make those shots, that works too. And 3's more than 2. But he's such. So the way Brett Underwood talked about him, and just what I observed over the last year plus, he is a vocal leader on this team, and really, over this past spring, knew kind of what the dynamics of this team was going to be. A lot of newcomers and some young guys. He embraced being that leader and maybe taking on more than he was, able to as a freshman, where he wanted to do the same. And if things are going wrong against the zone, he's a voice that they could use probably on the court. Now he's still on the bench, still vocal. I see him occasionally, just kind of as I'm glancing around, and he stays active and is talking, but it's different if he was on the court. So I think just as a safety valve for any problems, he could have been important. But so someone's going to have to do that in his stead, and I think it'd be good if Coleman Hawkins did it. I think it'd be good if Matthew Meyer did it. Just his continued progression, Matthew Meyer, I think, is important for this team to maybe achieve all that it wants to this year. Because he hasn't quite maybe reached the level I think he's capable of.
I agree. And I think they're all. You mentioned Coleman. In the UCLA game, I believe it was, he took 2 shots. Didn't shoot it well in the Virginia game, but I appreciated the aggressiveness that he played with in that Virginia game. Like you said, he's always going to do some good things. because of his length on the defensive end, deflections, rebounds, some block shots. He does all of the other things, but I agree with you. We need him to be more aggressive offensively and not just take shots, but make shots. And I think that will help us out. What I'm looking forward to against this zone is really having, like you mentioned, him in that high post area, having Matt Meyer in that high post area, being able to sneak Terrence Shannon in that high post area, as well as breaking down the zone and getting to the basket. I think those are a couple of keys that would, I mean, a couple of things that would really help going against and attacking this zone. Do you agree with that, or is there something else that you see, Scott?
Yeah, and I think just the fact that Brad Underwood values good passers so much is like they have a lot of different guys that can run through that spot, and they have the guys that can move the ball. Like there's a lot of snappy ball movement eventually, yeah, against Lindenwood, and Scott Clark and Brad Underwood both talked about it. Was that 0.5 basketball is like don't let the ball stick in your hands longer than half a second, right. And I like that. So I think just the way this roster is built, they have the options to, like, if someone just isn't handling it well in the moment, it's like, okay, like let's try somebody else, and like they won't lose anything, I don't think, by doing that.
And that's one of the things I like about this team. Is their skill level. When I talk to people, I tell them this may be the most skilled team from top to bottom that we've had probably since '89. I mean, when you have someone like Dane Danger who can take the ball off the glass and push the ball up the court like a guard, we haven't had a five that could do that in maybe ever. I mean, his skill level. But one of the things I like, and I know we're still talking about the Syracuse game, is his ability to get the ball in the post and make passes out of the post to key players. But I want to move on to another stat, and this isn't just all Illinois. This is Big Ten ACC Challenge kicks off tonight. I know you cover us. I don't know how, if you have an opportunity to watch all of the other teams, but tonight we got Minnesota, Virginia Tech, Pitt, and Northwestern. But overall, how do you see, because this has gone back and forth, and for somebody that has the top 25 vote, and you get to, really put more input to it than maybe some others. How do you see these two conferences? I mean, they're normally 1 and 2, or the ACC has done better in the tournament than the Big Ten has, but throughout the year, the Big Ten tournament has been the best. How do you see this this year's Big Ten ACC Challenge going?
I mean, I don't see any situation where the Big Ten's not going to come out on top. The ACC has had kind of a rough first few weeks, and I mean, look at Louisville has been just a disaster, and Florida State is. There are some people talking about Florida State. Could have been maybe ranked in the preseason. I think that a lot of that's based on Leonard Hamilton's just a good coach, and they always seem to outperform their expectations. Have not done that. This year I think they're 1 and 6. Whereas the Big Ten, as Big Ten, you look at like a team like Purdue picked up 2 huge wins over the weekend out in Portland at the PK 85, and beat Gonzaga and beat Duke and jumped up in the poll. And Michigan State has taken a couple losses, but they beat Kentucky, and there's been a lot of good wins from the Big Ten, from most of the Big Ten actually, in this first month. And the ACC has struggled kind of as a conference. And just look at North Carolina was a preseason #1. They lose twice in Portland, and they go tumbling. And like the games before that, like they were playing these teams that they should be handling fairly easily, like playing them too close, I think. Yeah. So like defense is again like one of their main issue they have to figure out. But I mean, the Big Ten, there were some questions about it heading into the year. Just so many guys, so many stars from last year that weren't back. But it was just, I think, a matter of just wait and see how a lot of these new look teams kind of figure it out. And it looks pretty good in the Big Ten. It's the first month, and obviously things can change, but Big Ten's still pretty good. The ACC's got work to do.
Yeah, early on, I agree with you. Well, I love the way the Big Ten looks. I love the way they have been playing. They've been playing good competition. You know, Brad this year, well, not this year and last year have done kind of the Tom Izzo and put together really, really good schedules. And most of the other Big Ten teams have done that as well and have really fared well. So, I mean, out of these 14 teams, I mean, I think we have a really good chance, of course, winning the challenge. But the Penn States, who are normally not the great teams in the Big Ten, have actually looked and played pretty good. I think people were a little, didn't know how Maryland was going to be, even though they were returning some good players. But you got the changes that was taking place over in Maryland. They have looked really good. So Wisconsin is Wisconsin. I don't care who anybody is or who they have or don't have. They make everybody's job hard. But you mentioned those teams that are in the Big Ten that have fared well so far, and the ACC has not. I'm really looking forward to it. Is there one game that and here are just a few of the really good games. Of course, Syracuse, Illinois, but Syracuse is a little down. Iowa, Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Michigan is a game coming up on Tuesday. I want to see Duke, Ohio State, North Carolina, Indiana, probably the bigger headliner games. Any one of those that really stands out to you that you're going to want to check out?
Well, Duke, Ohio State, Indiana, North Carolina are the only two games that have ranked teams on both sides. So, I mean, those are certainly interesting. I'm curious to see what Michigan does because, like, their record's okay, but they have not played great basketball in these first couple of weeks, and like by the advanced metrics are like 12th in the Big Ten. Just it's just been a little rough, and then their loss to Arizona State came after Hunter Dickinson was on a podcast was like, oh, we're gonna beat them by 20. Didn't Hunter. So I'm curious to see what they can do against Virginia because you're getting a chance to see Virginia in person in Vegas. Change my opinion of them a little bit. It's just I like what they do. It's not overly exciting basketball all the time, but like they just don't make mistakes.
No. And now they've added some scoring. I mean, they always play great defense, and now they've added some scoring. I mean, I think they're averaging more than 70 points a game. I mean, when does a Virginia team average over 70 points? I mean, it's normally a race to 50 to see who's going to win.
They averaged that many when they won a national championship in 2019. Like that team had some scorers. So, I mean, maybe Tony Bennett's got that same kind of mix, but
I agree with you that they have definitely transformed themselves. They've gone back to, like you said, a team that won the national championship, really being able to score the basketball. So that's going to be an interesting game. And I haven't had an opportunity to watch Michigan fully. I've only seen, stats and some numbers and things like that. But they've taken some tough losses this year, as you mentioned that Arizona State game. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in this Big Ten challenge. But let's get back to the orange and blue. So we get rid of the Big Ten ACC challenge, and then we go on to the Jimmy V, and we got Texas. Texas is a beast. I'm sure that's a little far off in the distance. I know I haven't started to do my homework on Texas yet outside of watching them beat Gonzaga. How do you see, or what do you think that's a good matchup for us at this early stage? I mean, I think it's great that we're playing tough teams, and as you said earlier, it won't make or break what happens with us long term in this season. But I'm looking forward to seeing our young players play against, that type of athleticism and speed that Texas team has.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Brad Underwood wants to test his team and figure out where they are in the first month of the season, Texas will do that. And it's interesting because last year's Texas team, Chris Beard went so heavy on the transfers, and it just didn't work. I don't think they were able to gel, very well. Just so many new guys, with a first year coach, at least at Texas. This year, it's a better mix. Returned guys like Marcus Card, Timmy Allen, Dylan Dissy was healthy. I think has played some really good basketball. Got Tyrese Hunter from Iowa State, two really impressive freshmen, and Dylan Mitchell and Arterio Morris. It's just the mix is better, and they've been really good. And they've got this brand new arena in Austin that they're playing at. But I'm excited to go to Madison Square Garden to see that matchup, and that's a game like Illinois gets a win there. Like that's a statement. It's like there's no drop off in this program. Things are full speed ahead. We'll see. It's tall order to do that, but it's a talented Illinois team. It's not out of the question.
Right. On this, no, and I agree, and I don't know if they, the odds makers will have us as the favorites. I'm sure they'll probably have us down a few points. But what I like about this Illinois team is the resilience that they play with. They don't stop. They don't care whether they're down 15 as they were against UCLA, or if they're in a dogfight as they were with Virginia. This team's going to play and play hard. And I think Terrence Shannon Jr. has really stepped up and shown, hey, I'm that guy. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to be the one. And I think more so from a force of play. I wish he was more vocal, which he is, but I wish he was more vocal. How have you seen his development since he's hit campus? Because like I saw him early, you've seen him early. How do you think he has progressed in his role?
Well, it's funny because he comes from Texas Tech team where like everybody was equal. Like they just didn't, just the way they play and the way they're structured, like there wasn't going to be a star. It was just going to be a lot of solid basketball players. But like he has, I think, embraced that bigger role here, and I think he's led in his own way. He's like very soft spoken, but like if you listen to what he says, like that's the important thing. Like he gets his point across, and I think his teammates value him in that role, mostly because he's one of the guys that's been there and done it at a high level before. I think he's thriving with the ball in his hands more, and I think what stood out to me the most is how much he's come on as a playmaker, like for himself certainly, but like he's one of 3 players nationally right now averaging at least 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. And the other 2 are Jalen Wilson at Kansas and Drew Timme at Gonzaga. Like that's pretty good company.
Yeah,
obviously he's had like these big scoring nights, but like he's had like 6 assists in a game, before. Like I think that part of his game has come out more, as the ball has been in his hands more to initiate some offense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's really, I believe, that's going to move him up. I'm talking draft boards now, that I don't believe a lot of people really saw at Texas Tech. I don't think they really saw his ability to shoot the ball, and I mean he's worked so hard on that, and there are vast improvements on him shooting the ball. But his ability to pass and facilitate for others has definitely stood out since he's been with Illinois. And we mentioned earlier Matt Meyer, where we believe, and I think I can speak for you on this, where we believe he's going to be, having championship pedigree and have been such a big piece with that Baylor team. You mentioned earlier his progression. Can you expound a little bit more on where the growth that you've seen him since he's gotten here? I remember having a conversation with him earlier, Scott, and he was like, man, we ain't never worked like this. Talking about the difference between Baylor and now at Illinois.
Yeah, that's, I think, part of what's slowed that process a little bit. Not the hard work part, but just he played 4 years at Baylor in a specific style and scheme and system, and like a lot of that was ingrained, and you kind of have to throw it all out when you make a change that late in your career. So he's had to get acclimated to how Brad Underwood runs things and like what this system is like. So that's taken some time, and like when you look at him, as like you see the potential. It's like 6'9", can shoot it, he rebounds pretty well, good defender, and it's just, I think it comes to him like just tapping into that potential. And I know last year at Baylor, they tried to put him in a slightly more primary role, after
Mhm.
because he'd been pretty much a role player, a good one,
Right.
obviously on a national championship winning team. But his first 3 years, he wasn't asked to do as much as he was, last year with Baylor. And the production went up, but efficiency went down. So I think if
Mhm.
he can find a happy medium at Illinois, I think you'll see the numbers jump across the board, production and efficiency, and just it's there. I'm not sure what's going to take to get all of that out of him. That's why they pay Brad Under with the big bucks, though. That I
Yeah,
just
and
talked about.
he reminds me a lot. Um, in my opinion, that's going to help him get better as a player. Is the same thing I think about Coleman Hawkins. Don't think, just play. I feel a lot of the time when I'm sitting there at the table, next to you, that you could see them thinking. Unlike someone, and Terrence Shannon is on a different level, of course, but he's not thinking. He's out there seeing and he's processing quickly and he's playing. Do you think that's something right now that's plaguing both, Coleman as well as Matt? I think we both agree that their ceiling is super high. Just right now, they're in their own way.
Yeah, and Coleman, like he knows the game and like watches a lot of NBA and like he understands things and like I think he overthinks it too much.
Yeah,
It's like he's thinking four chess moves ahead. It's like let's just get this first one right, and then that can be successful. You don't need these next ones. Like I don't mind like a guy like that. It's just I think when he figures out the best combination of okay, like I can see this move leads to this move leads to that, um, but just to do it a little more fluidly and like I mean, the sky's the limit. You look at Coleman Hawkins, he's 6'10", long, can shoot it,
yeah,
you know,
skill, yeah,
defends like he. That's what professional basketball players are now.
agreed.
Like if he can maximize his ability, like Illinois could be great. I think.
I'll tell you, this is has the potential to be a really special team. You mentioned the job that these assistant coaches have done, bringing players in, um, getting players ready. What the best strength and conditioning coach, the mad scientist, does, getting guys ready to play and keeping them healthy. If you had to pick one guy, yeah, I'm putting you on the hot seat. Pick
Okay.
one guy that you feel will be probably the I'm not gonna say the leading scorer or anything like that, but that piece that we need to continue. I know you just mentioned Coleman, but that piece that we need to get over that first weekend and into the second or even the third weekend once the tournament rolls around.
That's funny because I've been thinking about this a little bit since Friday, and I think it's Sky Clark. If he can be that guy that he was against Lindenwood,
Yeah.
but against similar competition, I think that just raises Illinois' floor and ceiling so much. It's like I don't want to like start comparing him to like could have an IO like effect as the guy that's got the ball in his hands a lot and makes his teammates better, but knows when it's time to go get one. And
Right.
I think if he can be that, like, I mean, pre ACL injury, he was a top 10 recruit, 5-star in his class. And like the injury, obviously, he's not playing, he's not being evaluated, his rankings dropped. But like, I think you can see a little bit of like why he was so highly regarded, 2 years ago. And
Mhm.
if he's that guy, but better because he's older and just his game has improved, like that could be huge for Illinois.
I love that. I love it. I would give him more, just in my opinion, not a difference, not arguing your point, because I think your point is valid. Making plays, doing things when you need to. I like to liken him to Darren Williams. If
Okay.
he can be that guy, because because Darren wasn't what he was when he got to the league, but all of that was right in there. You know, I look at him and like, if he can do that, which is facilitate as well as make big shots and make the right decisions out there, then yeah, he's going to push us way over the top. I just want him to shoot more. I want him to be more aggressive offensively, and he did that in Lindenwood. And I'm just hoping now, like you said, he's found that niche, and things are starting to slow down for him, and he's starting to understand where he can get and do those things. But you know, I'm feeling really good about this year, Scott, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at Syracuse, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. It could be a really fun year.
Yeah, I agree. Scott Richey, appreciate you, man, for joining me on Champaign on Ice. As always, looking forward to having you back again later on this year, just for your depth of knowledge and understanding of this Illinois team is definitely an added advantage to this podcast. So I thank you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll always say yes to you.
My man. All right, Scott. Champaign on Ice. We're going to close it out, Illini Nation. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And don't forget, keep cheering on those Illini. ILL, baby.